I played The Elder Scrolls Online to see if it was worth playing in 2026, and after a couple dozen hours, several allegations regarding my activities on the island of Solstheim, purging the city streets of the diseased, and a few desperate prayers to God Howard the Almighty, here is what I found out. Elder Scrolls Online is an MMO that came out in 2014. It takes place in Bethesda's Elder Scrolls franchise, the one where Skyrim's from, but it's developed by ZeniMax Online Studios, not by Bethesda directly. The game itself takes the idea of making an online MMO that is like the single-player Elder Scrolls Bethesda games and blah blah skibbity dibbity yitty ditty blah. Listen, you want something to play while you pretend Elder Scrolls 6 is coming out in your lifetime?
Got something for you.
But it's an online game, you antisocial little shit. This is exactly what you're looking for. Bunch of antisocial weirdos like you, like me, sharing their furry adventures across many different private islands, across many different provinces. But Bebop, I don't like MMOs. I want to be the main character. Well, good news for you, handsome. Everyone is the main character. Elder Scrolls Online provides a big epic campaign that many people enjoy even more than those of the main games. It takes you all across Tamriel and the map is absolutely huge. Can you tell how excited I am? I don't even know where to start. I refuse to take my ADHD meds and I'm on that Albanian shit. Okay, there's two moving super awesome parts here. Story and the world. Let's start off with the story. The single player Elder Scrolls games are softcore BDSM simulators at first, as they tend to start off in prison. ESO is not an exception. However, unlike previous games, instead of being imprisoned by the Empire, or the Empire, you are instead imprisoned by Satan in hell itself, but not the same Satan from the same hell in Oblivion from the Oblivion Gates. The other one, the blue Satan from the blue hell. The guy with the vampires who's into bondage. Anyway, Lucifer insults your manhood by making your soul shriveled, which is why NPCs call you the Soul Shriveled. You bust out of hell and set off on an epic journey to save the world from Lucifer and get your soul back. You take this apocalyptic task that threatens the world and your own immortal soul very seriously and with utmost urgency. Yeah, right. You've been doing side quests, exploring the map, talking to lusty Argonian women, and joining loads of factions with conflicting ideologies for the past 3 weeks. You've completely forgotten about old Molag and the main quest that's still in the first fucking zone. And that, my fellow nerds, is beautiful. This game contains side quests, random encounter side quests, faction storylines, and who knows what the fuck else that are incredibly engaging and just plain fun to do. One of the most important questions we gotta ask about games like this is how easy is it for players to get distracted or sidetracked in this game? And if the answer to that is yes, then you've got a pretty good game on your hands. I was doing zone main quests, zone side quests, favors for random NPCs and their dogs, dungeons, and even PvP. ADHD is welcome here in Walmart Tamriel. Side activities like gathering resources are something that is easy to get into because you don't need to learn how to mine or chop wood or buy a pickaxe or something. You just walk up to the thing, you want to pick it up, your character magically pulls out the appropriate tool that he doesn't have in his inventory out of his ass. And now all of a sudden, you are carefully extracting the runes from an ancient runestone. You need those for enchanting. Gathering is something you can jump into right away. Once you do eventually get back to the main campaign though, even then you'll have a blast. While yes, the main storyline isn't exactly going to give you a brain aneurysm due to how deep and complex it is, nor is it so emotionally well written that it's going to have you crying like when you found out the 2 Girls 1 Cup was staged and they were actually eating chocolate milk. But regardless of that, it's still a really good, fun, and epic fantasy storyline with great voice acting and great character.
Okay, preserve us. You're as battered and bruised as a peach in a sack of rocks. No matter, you'll be needing an escape route, no doubt.
The other part of ESO that is absolute cinema is the game world itself. I mean it when I say this. There is one thing that ESO does better than any other game that I have ever played, and that is the world. It's the most convincing MMO world I've ever played. First of all, let's get the basic context out of the way. The world is massive. It has most of the entire map of Tamriel available, with the rest of the zones well on the way. Every update gives new zones, and they are massive and fleshed out. It's not like you've got one zone that's just like a shrunken version of Skyrim and another one that's Morrowind. The game's zones are different parts of the different provinces. There are many zones that make up Skyrim, Morrowind, Blackmarsh, Elsewhere, Somerset, you name it. I think Valenwood is the only one I didn't mention. Fuck Valenwood. And while there are some parts of the map that are still yet to be added, so much has been added to the game since its release, and all the provinces have at least a couple of zones. When you're going around different zones in the same province, the zones are unique but very similar, as you're still technically on the same land, but when you move over from a different province, oh boy, the difference should be pretty drastic. And it is. Going from Skyrim's Viking-themed cold north birch forest and snowy mountains to Blackmarsh's swamps, mud huts, totems, and massive spirally trees, it feels like a complete completely different game at times. Morrowind's Ashlands, Elsewhere's deserts, Somerset's elfiness. It's awesome. But scope and variety isn't the reason I say this is the best game world I've ever played. Oh no. ESO does something that no other game has done to this extent and this level of quality. I'm talking about the cities and settlements. I mentioned how every province has loads of zones, but all of those zones have big cities in them, villages, settlements. They all have NPCs and they're all populated by players. It's not like most MMOs like SWTOR or WoW, where you only have one real player hub per faction. The world as you explore feels real when you reach these population centers after riding over treacherous mountains and fighting deadly monsters. And you see like Windhelm or Ebonheart in the distance. The entire map isn't just a pretty landscape and mobs to kill with a couple of cities here and there. Not even single player games do this sort of thing this well. And the quality of the cities themselves, oh daddy, it's peak. Is it just me or are Riften and Winterhelm bigger than they were in Skyrim? It sure feels like it. Online games usually just have functional NPCs and builds. Little to no houses where people live, no villages in areas where there logically would be villages, no random cities spread here and there. You get an entire game world of mobs and not many cities, and the cities that are there don't feel like cities. They feel more like giant outdoor shopping malls because there's only stores, banks, or whatever else players need functionally. No houses where NPCs live or anything like that. And even in single player games like Skyrim, it feels like 99.67% of the population is banded. ESO is an improvement in this regard over I think any game I've played. The world itself, the realistic amount of cities, and the amount of NPCs walking around doing activities, living in their own houses plus the players, makes the world and the world's population feel very alive and very realistic. The NPCs having their own shops and houses, you're never like, where is everybody? Or does this vendor just live in this little market stall? Or like, why are there no houses in this city? You go into an NPC's house while the NPC is at their store or being a guard or whatever, and you see somebody in there with the same last name, like a sibling or a spouse. Wow, this NPC has a life. I am very immersed. No other game comes to mind where the world feels this real. And while you're exploring around the world, you keep running into these genuinely fun, random encounters. Remember Lucifer? Yeah, the big bad god of domination. He has that kind of domination too. His whole plan is to take over the world, and he does that using using these cosmic interdimensional magic spaceship bondage chains that slam down from another dimension and outer space at the same time. Which, to my understanding of Elder Scrolls lore, that is in fact how the Oblivion Realm works. Anyway, magic space hooks go brrrr, spawn demons, kill demons, fight space lich mini-boss. The loud noise combined with the megalophobic visuals scare the shit out of me every time I see these things appear. But okay, enough about my fear of large objects. What about the gameplay? ESO's combat is infamous for being spammy and floaty, and I have something to say to that. That's fair at first. It does get way better the further you get into the game though. At its core, ESO uses action combat instead of tab targeting. The floaty part honestly isn't that bad compared to that of mainline Elder Scrolls games. In fact, hot take, it's actually an improvement over them. It's basically Skyrim combat, but with plus numbered abilities on action bars and dodge rolling. So Skyrim, but the game acknowledges the fact that you have fingers. You got your basic attack and you hold down mouse button for heavy attack. Only here's the fun part. Instead of heavy attacks costing stamina, heavy attacks refill stamina. Explain to me how the fuck that makes sense. You get tired by doing special moves, but if you slowly swing your weapon like you're underwater, your character is like, ah yes, I am rested now. So combat turns into this loop where you dump stamina on the action bar abilities, then heavy attack like an exhausted caveman to refill the bar. It works though, not gonna lie, it gives you something to do when you're out of stamina, other than just, you know, pausing the gameplay. It's a good way to fill that gap. That said, it does take a while before combat becomes actually engaging. Early on, you basically just spam one button because you don't have a real build yet. Then later, once you develop your class, you unlock your abilities, you're still spamming one button. But now it's because it's objectively optimal. Before you hit harder content, there's no real need for rotations, weapon swapping, or using your brain at all. You don't have to play poorly, but the game sure as fuck lets you. Now, in regards to the classes, it wouldn't be an Elder Scrolls game if it didn't offer unreasonable, borderline irresponsible build freedom. ESO does have classes that you pick at the start of the game, and each class has specs that you level up by actually using their abilities. Each spec also has its own ultimate ability, which charges as you fight, and is basically your oh shit button, your strongest spell that you save for dramatic moments. Either that or just pop whenever it lights up. However, and this is important, your class is not your only source of abilities. You also level up skills based on the kind of items that you use, and you are not limited to what you can equip. If you level two-handed weapons, for example, you get warrior-style abilities for two-handed weapons. If you use staffs, you get staff abilities. If you use bows, congratulations, you're William Tell. The game basically looks at what you're holding and goes, yeah, sure, why not? This lets you combine ideas and come up with some absolutely unhinged builds and character concepts. For example, I picked the Warden class, which has 3 specs, some some nature magic shit, animal companions, and frost magic. So far, I've only leveled frost magic, and I'm using it in combination with two-handed weapon abilities and heavy armor. Yes, I'm a cryomancer barbarian. I do agree that Frost Viking is a generic build idea. Fuck you, fight me. As you get better at using certain abilities, you're given a choice between two upgrades for that ability. Do you want your charge ability to do more damage, or turn it into an AoE damage over time ground effect? Do you want your Ice Tornado to do more damage and hit a wider area, or do you want it to stop dealing damage altogether and instead heal you and nearby friends? This adds even more customization and also lets you accidentally ruin your build if you're not paying attention. And if that somehow still isn't enough, the factions you join also give you their own abilities as you lever their skill trees by doing faction-specific tasks. Take the Fighters Guild, for example. They have an ultimate ability where you summon the fucking Dawnbreaker and go absolutely ballistic on whatever poor fuck is in front of you. Oh, and did I mention you can become a werewolf or a vampire? Yeah, that also gives you an entire extra set of abilities, because of course it fucking does. Oh, but Bebop, what are you supposed to do with all those abilities? If your character basically has every skill in the game, what's the point? Well, your only real limiting factor here is your action bars. Apart from the skill points you get from leveling up, the game also has sky shards. Giant glowing myth rocks hidden throughout the world to incentivize exploration. You get a skill point for every 3 you snort. So realistically, you can unlock almost any skill you want. You're just limited by how many buttons you can actually fit on your screen, which is not many. The game gives you 2 weapon sets that you can swap between, each with its own action bar. Weapon swapping is a huge part of ESO's combat, and I myself find it to be as fun as putting your mom's hair clip on your lips as a kid. You could have a dual-wield 2 one-hander single target DPS build, then swap to a 2-handed sword for AoE damage. You could be a mage with a staff for DPS, then swap to a sword and shield for defensive play. A sneaky stabby dagger rogue that switches to bow for range damage while summoning furry friends. Anything your deranged little heart desires. My goal when I started this game was to create the ultimate Viking. So now I've got a 2-handed warrior with DPS sword and ice attacks slotted into 1 action bar, switching to sword and shield with frost armor abilities and self-healing tornado for tanking. Hybrid builds like this make a lot of content soloable, and they're also really fun in PvP, mostly because nobody knows what the hell you're doing, including you. Now let's talk about the PvE in ESO, because this is where things get interesting. My first experience with dungeon in ESO can be summed up like this. I did not play the dungeon, I witnessed it. Normal mode dungeons, at least early on, are absolute speedrun crack dens. You queue up, load in, take 1 step forward, and suddenly the rest of your group is already in 3 rooms ahead, killing everything in 1 hit like they're late for work. And I'm back there like, hey guys, should we? Boss dies. Oh cool, I'll just loot air. Enemies are exploding before I even finish my light attack animation. Mechanics? Lore? Dialogue? Brother, I don't even know what dungeon I'm in. I'm just sprinting through the hallways, desperately trying to stay in combat so the game doesn't ask me if I'm AFK, while 4 max level psychos with champion points in the quadruple digits are parkouring off walls and deleting entire ecosystem. And to be clear, this isn't them being assholes. This is just ESO PvE culture. Normal dungeons are basically treated like government chore. Get in, get your rewards, get out, do not stop, do not explain, do not acknowledge the baby player wheezing behind you. Me. As a new player, it's honestly kind of overwhelming. You don't know what's killing you, but nothing is killing you because it's too fucking easy. You don't know what you're killing, and you definitely have no fucking clue why the boss just evaporated before it could even finish its first shit-talking sentence. That's only normal mode though, I hope. It took me a while, but even I managed to pull off a build that can solo veteran mode dungeon. Yes, it takes me 6 years to kill a boss, but I still kill it. And then there's PvP. PvP in ESO, or as I like to call it, where you go to die in ways that Akatosh himself did not know possible. The game does have classic battlegrounds that I love the pacing of. It's got your standard Slaughterfest mode, capture the flag, stand near base to capture it modes, but like I said, the pacing is great. BGs are quick, the base capture meter moves fast, players move fast, it's all fast, baby. I have PTSD from WoW, from sitting at the bases by myself waiting for the thing to slowly capture the base and hoping I don't get attacked while my entire fucking team is fighting in the middle like creatures. No need to worry about that here though. Apart from BGs, Cyrodiil is the main PvP zone, a massive open world battlefield that makes your childhood dreams of organized combat look like a kindergarten finger painting. Here, factions fight over keeps, resources, and the souls of noobs who thought Cyrodiil was like the other zones. But you think you're safe exploring the area? Wrong. Some veteran decides that your face is the perfect canvas for their sword. Or should I say swords, because gankers travel in packs. Social groups. What virgins cannot achieve in reality, they achieve in game. 1 second you're looting a chest, the next you're airborne, spinning through the air like helicopter, and your corpse is now someone else's problem. The chaos doesn't stop there. Cyrodiil has siege weapons, so when you think a tower is just scenery, boom, catapult to the face, trebuchet to the kneecaps, and somehow you're still expected to defend your keep while 50 other players run around screaming for the Republic. But that's the beauty of it. Even if you die 37 times in a row, you're not just dying for nothing. Every respawn, every lost fight, every accidental murder of an innocent NPC is part of the story. That's what I tell myself at least. And if you somehow manage to survive a coordinated assault or Or better yet, 500 IQ your way to win a 3v1, which even as a new player, sometimes you can manage. You feel like a god among mortals, even if only for 5 seconds before a vampire rogue from the other faction decides to remove your face. And here's my favorite part. You can totally ignore PvP if you want. This is the first time I'm saying this though. You shouldn't. Don't ignore PvP in this game. Funsies. Cyrodiil is massive. There are so many areas you can spend 3 weeks avoiding other players and still feel like you're participating in the war. But for those who embrace it, absolute chaos. Pure, unhinged, medieval themed chaos. We're talking about crafting now. There are 6 crafting professions. Blacksmithing, clothing, clothing, what's the profession version of this called? English, not first language, sorry. Woodworking, alchemy, enchanting, and provisioning. Which sounds innocent enough until you realize that every random stick and leaf and monster corpse you pick up has the potential to become money, power, or accidental chaos. Let's start with alchemy, because nothing says fantasy immersion like grinding flowers for meth potions. You can craft healing potions, poison potions, buffs, stamina potions, poison potions, and basically every way to make your enemies regret existing. Blacksmithing, clothing, and woodworking are equally absurd. Want a sword that hits like Thor on a Monster Energy binge? Well, make it yourself, bitch. Want armor that makes you look like an edgy fashion influencer, but actually tanks damage? The sweatshop is right here. Enchant those items to make them even more schizophrenic. Then there's provisioning, cooking and drink. You can make food that heals you, food that buffs you, or food that probably gives you food poisoning or salmonella. Crafting in ESO is basically collect everything, make everything explode occasionally, enjoy the process. Alright, let's talk about monetization, because this is an MMO, and somewhere deep in the code, there has to be a way to siphon money out of your wallet. ESO is buy to play. You buy the game once, and that gets you the base game, plus the Morrowind/Vardenfell expansion, which is honestly a pretty solid amount of content, like accidentally lose 200 hours of your life levels of content. Officially, the base game costs about $20. Realistically, no it doesn't, because this thing is pretty much always on sale on Steam. I bought it for like $6. Now beyond the base game, there are a ton of other DLCs and expansions. You can either buy them individually or subscribe to ESO Plus, which gives you access to almost all DLC while you're sub. I regret to admit that ESO Plus is kind of cracked, as you get loads of DLC access, bonus XP, extra gold, and the most important thing of all, the crafting bag, which is infinite inventory for crafting materials. Once you have it, going back feels like trying to live without oxygen. Is this pay to win or pay to sanity? Now, let's talk about the crown store. Yes, there is in fact a premium currency. Yes, there are cosmetics, mounts, outfits, pets, emotes, decorations, you name it. If you've ever wanted to ride into battle on a flaming demon horse while wearing a glowing crown and being followed by a floating jellyfish, congratulations, you're the target demographic. And then there's the loot box system. Ah yes, crown crates. You open them, you hear a satisfying noise, bright colors flash on screen just like a casino, and for a brief moment your brain goes, this is gonna be huge. And then all you get is 3 potions of face marking you're never gonna use and a strong urge to say, just one more. It's basically fantasy themed gambling, but instead of losing your house, you lose your dignity. To be fair, everything in the crown store and the crown crates is cosmetic. No power, no gameplay advantage, just vibes, mounts, and poor financial decisions. So overall, ESO's monetization is reasonable for the low MMO standards that we have these days. Cheap entry cost, optional sub, optional cosmetics, and loot boxes you can safely ignore, unless you're weak, which statistically speaking, you probably are. Have you subscribed yet? So is ESO worth playing in 2026? Well, here's the thing. ESO is not a perfect MMO. Its combat takes way too long to click, its early game difficulty is so forgiving, it actively enables bad habit, its normal mode PvE teaches you absolutely nothing except how to sprint behind 4 demigods who've forgotten what fear feels like. And yes, the monetization occasionally look at you like a casino pit boss going, come on kid, just one more crate. But despite all that, this is still somewhere in my top 3 MMOs of all time, and I've played a lot of MMOs. Why do I think this game is worth your time? Well, despite all my bitching, and trust me, I stand by every single complaint, there's a reason I keep logging back into ESO. ESO has this dangerous quality where you sit down just to check something, and suddenly it's 3 hours later and you're emotionally invested in a town you didn't even know existed. What really surprised me is how often the game lets you slow down without punishing you for it. You're not constantly being shoved towards a meta, a timer, or a checklist screaming at you that you're playing wrong. You can wander, you can stop to listen to quest dialogue, you can follow a side story just because it caught your attention, not because it gives optimal rewards. That alone makes ESO feels less like a content treadmill and more like an actual place you're inhabiting. There's also something uniquely satisfying about how progression feels over time. Early on, your character is kind of a dumb idiot with a stick. Later, without the game ever screaming, now you are strong. You realize you're surviving fights that would have obliterated you before. You're handling enemies more cleanly. You understand your tools. Combat doesn't just get faster, it gets smarter as enemies get harder. Although it takes a while to get to that point. Game gets better after the first 80 to 100 hours, bro, trust me. The flexibility in how you play reinforces that feel. You're rarely locked into one solution. If something isn't working, you tweak it, change a skill, swap weapon, adjust how you approach fights. stats. Because you can just have all kinds of skills, and your class is what you got on your action bar and your items, basically. So you can just switch out what you got in your action bar and your items. It's pretty easy to tweak builds. It's inexpensive, not really time consuming. The game respects player experimentation in a way that most MMOs pretend to, but don't actually know how. It's less about chasing perfect builds and more about making something that feels like yours. And then there's the adventure factor, the hard to quantify part. ESO constantly puts you in situations that feels like stories you'll remember, not just content you consume. Random detours turn into multi-hour arcs. You're not just grinding levels, you're accumulating experiences. By the time you log off, it doesn't feel like you finished your dailies, it feels like you went somewhere. And that's the real trick ESO pulls off. Not being perfect, not being revolutionary, but being compelling enough that you keep coming back. Not because you have to, but because you kind of want to see what's over that hill over there.